Hello, today is December 1st, and today we are reading our second reading for this Sunday, the second Sunday of Advent. Our first reading is from Paul's letter to the Philippians, chapter 1, verses 3 through 11. I thank my God every time I remember you, constantly praying with joy in every one of my prayers for all of you, because of your sharing in the gospel from the first day until now. I'm confident of this, that the one who began a good work among you will bring it to completion by the day of Jesus Christ. It is right for me to think this way about all of you because you hold me in your heart. For all of you share in God's grace with me, both in my imprisonment and in the defense and confirmation of the gospel. For God is my witness, how I long for all of you with the compassion of Christ Jesus. And this is my prayer, that your love may overflow more and more with knowledge and full insight, to help you to determine what is best, so that in the day of Christ you may be pure and blameless, having produced the harvest of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ, for the glory and praise of God. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Our reading of Paul's letters is exactly that. We are reading someone's letters when we read the works of Paul. In this letter to the to the church in Philippi, is one of those letters, is one of the primary letters that are attested as being definitely written by the same person. There are a group of letters that are thought to have been written directly by Paul, rather than those letters that were attested to Paul, but probably were written by somebody else. Most of Paul's letters, so this letter from the Philippians is one of the last letters that Paul probably wrote in his life. Probably one of the very last would be the letter to the Romans, which we could just call Romans, and some of the other books that he definitely wrote. And this is, according to the oldest documents we have, according to the vocabulary that is used, the similarity of how they're written, the theology that is present in them. These are all, there's a sort of a group that are seen as canonical. So that'd be Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Philippians, Galatians, 1st Thessalonians. And so reading these letters to these churches, Paul was communicating to people he knew. He often had advice for conflicts that they were having. Frequently, he would be writing to churches to weigh in on some controversy or the other. The letter to the Galatians is one of these. There's a large controversy happening, and Paul writes a letter weighing in, giving guidance on how they should move forward. The letter to the Romans is an introductory letter. That's a letter he wrote to basically set forth what he thought, since he had not met the Roman church up to that point. There's so much. The letter to the Romans is so long and goes into such theological depth because Paul is in some ways setting forth his theology. And at that point, it's a very developed theology. This letter to the Philippians, however, it does address some controversies and difficulties of the church. But it's not, most of what the Philippian church is going through is not internal controversy. There's no argument that's happening. Like the Galatian church clearly had an internal controversy. The Philippian church is a church that is enduring persecution. And this is the same, this probably can be identified with the persecutions that the book of Acts describes Paul going through. That there is something, the Philippians are being attacked by their enemies in the public, both physically and rhetorically. And so Paul is giving them encouragement. And actually, given the record in Acts, and the fact that Paul does get imprisoned at different points in his career, this letter seems to have been written, and he references in this section, from prison. That Paul writes this letter to the Philippian church from prison, encouraging them as they are facing their own problems. So, as Paul's writing this letter from prison, you'd imagine that a letter from prison would be despairing, would be at least include some details of what he's going through. But instead, really, this is a letter that is full of joy, full of gratitude. That after the salutation of verses 1 and 2 in the Philippians chapter, he starts, "I thank my God every time I remember you, constantly praying with joy in every one of my prayers for all of you, because of your sharing in the gospel from your first day until now." That Paul is writing just with pure gratitude and joy. And it's a joy that does not match the circumstances in which he's held. Roman prison was not typically a punishment, but rather a waiting period. That you could be imprisoned for any amount of time until your trial was held, or you were executed, or the authorities decided what to do with you. So Paul was imprisoned, and in a Roman prison, they did not feed you. You were supported by outside people coming to visit you. There was very little concern for your comforts, very similar, I think, to prison conditions the world over. And so Paul is writing this from a place of uncertainty, but his joy, his certainty, his hope is not, it isn't grounded in his conditions. It's not grounded in the possibility of a plea bargain. It's not grounded in his hope that the governor of Judea will show him mercy. Instead, he turns to God. He says, God is at work in you, and I have so much joy over the faith that you have found and the community that you have formed in the face of your difficulties. And I've even seen my joy comes from, and later in the reference in the letter he references, I have been able to share my witness to the guard in my prison. The guards are hearing the message. They are being affected by it. The love of God overflows no matter the circumstances. And Paul writes this, and I think this is a great example of what a faithful response to difficulty, to genuine persecution looks like. As Christians, I think there's a lot of noise that gets trumpeted by certain Christian groups that say, we're being persecuted, sound the alarm, we're victims, we're the real victims here. And first of all, in this country, no, I would say that being a Christian, you are not being persecuted because you're being criticized. Anyone can criticize anyone in this country, and Christians, or those who claim the name of Christ, do a lot of criticizing themselves. And for those who are going through genuine persecution, which I've already said, I don't think in our particular cultural setting, this is North American Christianity, we're facing any real persecution. But in the face of that, even in our false persecution, we should take note of what Paul's response is. Our response is not defensiveness. Our response should not be anger or to go into an attack mode against others. Our response is to say, I am grateful for the faith shown in the face of difficulty. I'm grateful for the strength God has given us to face, and I am grateful for the harvest of righteousness that comes only through the action of God. My joy is sourced in God alone, in this community of faith alone, and not in our work or the glory we get out there in the world. There's a lot of richness in the letter to the Philippians, but that's all we're going to go into this week. I hope you are having a very good week, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.